Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Aaron Corvin, a business reporter for the Columbian, and I'd like to welcome you to Economic Development Opportunities, one of 4 breakout panel discussions assembled by the newsroom, and would also like to recognize the management group as our sponsor of the breakout panels. I want to kind of get right down to business here. So without further ado, I have the great pleasure of introducing our moderator today. Ron Arp is president of the strategic public relations firm Amplify Group. He also serves on the board of Identity Clark County, a nonprofit dedicated to enhancing the region's economy. And so I'd like to get the show on the road here and invite you to join me in a warm round of applause for our moderator, Ron Arp.
I simply want to let you know that I'm filling in and pinch hitting today for John McKibben, who apparently discovered that basketball was more of a contact sport than his body should be taking at his age, and so he's doing a little recovery. So our wishes are all with him and for a speedy recovery while he bounces back. I want to jump right into the panel. We have a great panel discussion today, and that's what you're all here to hear and not hear from me. Teresa Brum with the City of Vancouver, we're delighted to have her here. She's had exposure in Spokane and in the Seattle area, so she really understands economic development throughout the area. Mike Bomar, just an outstanding man who's leading Columbia River Economic Development Council in his 2nd year there. Has put in a lot of miles in this community in a lot of different areas already in terms of Southwest contractors and the builders and even pitching a few baseballs in the professional leagues along the way. So he's now pitching a community, and I think that's pretty good. So then we got Paul Dennis, who is mayor of Camas, and now he's leading the Camas Washougal Economic Development Program, and we're very excited to have him, especially after hearing from Ken Fisher and the exciting things that are going on in Camas. Just fantastic news. And we have Lynn Valenter, who is the Vice Chancellor at WSU Vancouver. The easiest way to describe Lynn is the CFO for the campus at WSU Vancouver, which is now over 3,000 students and a bright, shining example of our community getting behind education in a big way, and it's something certainly Identity Clark County supports as well. So with that, we're going to let Mike Bomar kick off, and we're just going to have them start from their seats. We'll get through some initial opening remarks, and then we're going to throw it open for Q&A and have this an active discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to be here today. Thank you to the Columbian as well, too, for putting on a great event. I'm sure, like me, you all really enjoyed listening to Ken Fisher this morning. And I'm going to try not to be as blunt as he was, but I'll still try to be relevant, be quick, and so you can ask the questions that you want to hear from us. If you don't know, the Columbia River Economic Development Council is a public-private partnership. We exist to help develop and grow an innovative Clark County in Southwest Washington, and we do that with our public and private partners. We have over 140 different investors and partners that we work with, many here today and in the audience as well, too. Again, being brief, I'm just going to focus on a couple key points that I see coming into 2015 for us, and it's important to know we don't forecast it as an organization, so I'm just going to talk about more initiatives that we have going on and things that are going to be important to us. The first is really defending our key advantages. There's a couple of things, and Ken talked about schools, which is huge for us. I see John Dieter there, Lynn, Kevin with Clark College, I believe I saw as well, too. Amazing educational assets. Energy, the cost of energy, particularly with our semiconductor companies that we have in the area and others that use a lot of water and electricity, it's a huge advantage for us. It allows them to do other things that for us to create, to bring companies in with either higher wages or other things where we don't compete as well internationally, and it offsets that. So it's very important. And the other is transportation, freight, rail, and commerce. There's been some amazing leadership in the past on really setting up a strong transportation infrastructure, and that's going to be a key issue this year as we look at what are we going to do going forward for our community, what investments are we going to make that help spur economic development going forward. There are other key tax preference issues that we're working through with the legislature right now that were key to our area, again, in a very slim margin environment with some very large companies. Some really important preferences in the high-tech community. We have a great high-tech council. That organization is important here, and we'll be working to defend those advantages. So the first half and it's tied to the legislature, is that defending our key competitive advantages. And that's always a theme for us, but particularly we're active and we have great business leaders that help inform us and great partners that help us on what policies make sense for our community. Another interesting opportunity, and this is one of several things going on, but we have strong sectors in marine, defense, aerospace in our state, and recreational as well too within the region. And those things tie all really nicely to composites manufacturing. As energy efficiency becomes more important, as new durable materials become important, composites are increasingly of interest to manufacturers, and there's some interesting movement in that industry, and we're taking a look closely at how Clark County can position ourselves well to be in that market, both on the front end, on supply chain, on product development, but also on the recycling end as well too. And again, utilizing some of the really strong research and development institutions that we have, both with Clark College and with WSU, and how do we help build that potential here in Clark County. So again, I'm going to leave it open to questions. I'm interested to hear what you want to hear about, but it's really about defending our key advantages. I think it's going to be a very strong year, strong pipeline, diverse recruitment opportunities still continuing, a lot of business expansion happening as well, and we're encouraged to see that, and we just want to make sure we defend those things and look forward to what new opportunities we can do to help increase what is already an amazing place to live. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pass the microphone to Teresa Brum with the City of Vancouver. And Teresa's been here about a year, so this is her first economic forecast breakfast, so we're very excited to have her here.
Thanks, Ron. And so you know I'm new, so that's one disadvantage. I'll point out a second disadvantage. I'm not a fast talker. So anybody who knows me knows I'm like the thoughtful, person who wants to go on for hours and hours, and these guys are like lightning quick. So hopefully I've had enough coffee that I can speed it up and get through this in my allotted 8 minutes. So great to see so many people here today who are interested in economic development opportunities. I work for the City of Vancouver as the Economic Development Manager, and so my remarks will be confined within the boundaries of the city limits. I want to step back and tell you about when I came to Vancouver last year, outsider looking in, and I did my own personal assessment here, and I worked in Washington State for a long time, so I started out by looking at Vancouver and thinking, hitting the highlights or the high points of economic development, foundational activity in Vancouver, and I have my own checklist, and I have to say it was incredibly positive. First, I looked at incentives. Is the City of Vancouver open to incentives? Have they adopted the incentives that are in place? Absolutely, check mark on that one. We've got multifamily tax abatement. We have actually 2 areas of local revitalization financing, so Vancouver did a good job of taking advantage of that tool, and we even have a new brownfield environmental remediation incentive program that we're getting going. Second, I looked at the opportunity for innovation partnership zones, a state opportunity. Vancouver's got 2. Great, check mark on that one. How about permitting? How's our permitting time? In the last couple of years, Vancouver streamlined its permitting time, so we have a 90-day turnaround for commercial permitting. I know we're not supposed to talk about the region, but if you're in the region on the other side of the state and you say 90-day turnaround, you get looks of disbelief, so that's really exciting. Partnerships, do we have good partnerships in place? Absolutely. High point of Vancouver, we have functional partnerships with everybody in economic development who provides that service, so I give Vancouver high marks for that. And then finally, is there good foundational planning work done? Absolutely, and that's really the key of my remarks, is the 8 areas of the City of Vancouver that have already been planned for growth, and this is great work that's been done, puts us at a huge competitive advantage. And so there are 8. We can find out, you can find out more about all 8 on the city's website, but I'm going to highlight those, starting with number 1, Waterfront. Waterfront is Vancouver's huge economic development opportunity, unprecedented opportunity here in this region. Seattle, Tacoma, Bellingham, all the other cities, even Spokane, have developed their waterfront already, and we're just getting started. Think of what we can learn from their experience and do it even better. We just saw the announcement a month ago for the hotel on the waterfront. Construction work is being done as we speak on the roads that are crucial and the utilities that are crucial for development to occur. And so even those initial obstacles of the access through the railroad berm already taken care of. New arterial, Columbia Way, under construction right now, will be finished by the end of the summer. And we have planned also really an unparalleled public park on the waterfront, 7.2 acres there. We still have the opportunity for up to 1.1 million square feet of office space, so great chance for relocation of corporate headquarters, more office space there, and residential. There's a projected 2,500 to 3,300 residential units there as well. Next, moving to Main Street downtown. I see an incredible opportunity in, let's look at Main Street in a different way. Yes, Main Street has always been our focus for an area of financial institutions and public sector. But I will also add to that discussion an innovation partnership zone on Main Street. So the whole community getting together now and focusing on high tech on Main Street. And we started out by surveying to see what have we got on Main Street. Initially, a year ago, we thought, well, we had about 13 or 14 high-tech businesses on Main Street downtown, but our research and surveys now show we have 32, which we think, based on our research, is the highest concentration of those small tech companies in the Southwest region located on Main Street. So there's an opportunity for more tech companies to locate there, but there's also a development opportunity there for anybody who owns space downtown to reframe that space and look at it not just as what we traditionally think of as Class C space, but instead Class C creative space. The creative organizations want creative space that reflects their business, and they want that space like high ceilings and, hey, who's been to the grocery? The restaurant, the grocery? Anybody been there? Okay, if you haven't been there, go there, and you'll see the kind of creative space that those companies are looking for. Let's see. Lost my place. We also have a great opportunity downtown. Bus rapid transit is coming. It is coming from Vancouver Mall and looping down 4th Plain to downtown. And statistically, we know that bus rapid transit is just like fixed transit. It improves property values, and any stop that has identified in that route is an opportunity for development. I'm going to move on to Lower Grand employment area. This is a 173-acre older industrial area on Lower Grand, not reaching its potential, but the city just is completing a grant-funded market study and action plan in that area, taking a coordinated approach to resolving outstanding infrastructure issues like flooding, pictures I've seen, big problem, but also environmental issues, but we're taking a proactive approach. So if you own property there, great time to really invest and expand in that area. In the long term, in East Vancouver, Section 30, 550 acres east of 172nd, another planned area, planned in about the planning process ended in about 2008, but still, that's a good foundation in place, and projected there, we have projected 100 acres of industrial that can be developed, and there is a need in this whole region for industrial, especially 50-acre plus parcels. We also have projected 100 acres as office or healthcare. or even tech schools. And so there's an opportunity there. So that's a highlight of what we're doing on our side at the city, and we are actively looking for grants and incentives and ways that we can put infrastructure in to provide the environment for development to occur. And I think it's a great time to do business in Vancouver.
Wow, a lot going on. So that's very exciting.
Too much talk.
And I see some people with Vancouver's Downtown Association. That's a fun group that really is trying to tell people what there is to do in downtown Vancouver. And it's an impressive list, and they're getting behind and socializing that. So congratulations to them. Got Paul Dennis, Camas, Washougal Economic Development. Want to hear an update just a little bit east down Highway 14.
I thought you said you didn't talk very fast. That was pretty fast in my estimation. And you can see there's a lot going on. I think whether it's Vancouver, Camas, Washougal, any of our cities here in Clark County, you can see that there's a lot of economic activity that's going on right now. One of the questions I get quite often is, what's the difference between the Camas Washougal Economic Development Association and Mike's organization, the Columbia River Economic Development Council? And the only real difference is, because our partners that formed our organization are investors in Mike's organization, is we can be the advocate. So we can advocate for the Camas Washougal area. And that's our primary purpose, is to work with our partners, whether it be in the Innovation Partnership Zone with the City of Vancouver, whether it be with our higher ed or K-12 educational system, Columbia River Economic Development Council, or the Southwest Washington Workforce Development Council. We work in partnership because we're a small organization to try to achieve and further our community's objectives. Our organization was founded by the Port of Camas Washougal in partnership with both cities of Camas and Washougal as well. Like I mentioned, there's quite a bit that's going on here in Clark County. If I look at the city of Camas, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to drive through the community and see that construction activity is back at peak activity. We have a lot of clients that are looking at different development projects, whether it be commercial, industrial, which is our primary focus, but we also get individuals asking about residential projects. And to see the amount of activity that's going on is encouraging for those of us that are in economic development. And also, it shows that the economy has rebounded. We've spent, in our early years of formation in 2011, 2012, 2013, during the Great Recession and coming out of it, really focusing in on our existing businesses. What we wanted to do was focus more internal to our community and try to help our local businesses foster. And that's today still a core part of our business. But as the economic recovery is continued, we've increasingly seen outside companies looking in at trying to locate their business in the Camas Washougal area. If we can't assist them for us, then we try to work with Mike's organization and other organizations to make sure that those businesses can land in Clark County. Some of the initiatives that we've undertaken is putting together a website that's more interactive, that's pretty cutting edge. We hired a company last year to help us put together promotional videos, not just for a particular community like Camas and Washougal, but also the port, and try to tell our story from a different perspective, try to show how we relate to the broader region. We hired 5 very smart individuals at WSUV to help us put together a ebook. Essentially what that helped us do is create a standalone application that allows us to tell our story. And we had individuals like Ken Fisher and some of the other companies like Leonard Felix at CID Bioscience tell their story and their experience of working within our community. Probably our greatest initiative that we worked on this last year that'll probably have the longest dividend that'll pay back to the community is our community development entity. So at the end of last year, we formed a community development entity called Columbia LLC, and many of you would are probably asking yourself, what is a CDE, or what is a community development entity, and what does that have to do with economic development? Essentially, we're looking at our community areas that haven't achieved economic recovery, haven't seen the same benefits as other areas around the county or even within the Camas Washougal area, such as the port. And how do we try to spur capital investment? How do we spur job growth? One of those ways is a program called New Market Tax Credits. And essentially, we've formed an organization, put in an application, and asked Department of Treasury to be able to raise $30 million in capital for funding of projects that will help spur economic development. This is an entity that we created not just for the Camas Washougal area. Our geographic area starting out is all of Clark County. So as we start to take on different projects, as we're able to get tax credit allocations, we're able to look at projects not just within our area, but also in the broader county, such as Vancouver. Areas that are open for development, obviously both downtowns, both downtown Washougal and downtown Camas. Each of them functions differently. Each of them has a different population and economic base to draw upon. West Hickey and others have made tremendous investments in downtown Washougal and have helped try to transform the landscape in downtown Washougal. In downtown Camas, it's had a little bit more diverse capital investment, and we've seen a number of companies come in there, renovate older buildings. We have a gentleman right now that's actually looking at redeveloping an entire block and try to do a mixed-use project, and that'll be the first time in decades that someone's taken on a new project of that scale. The Port of Camas Washougal, we had Foods and Seasons expand this last year. They're in a 21,000 square foot building. The port is currently looking at building another building out there, what they call Building 17. We're looking at different funding options. We know it'll be a minimum of 25,000 square feet, but we're trying to look at different funding sources and bring that number up to about 50,000 square feet so that we can have some space to offer other prospective businesses looking in the area. We have the Waterfront. It's a partnership between the port and Killian Pacific. The Port of Camas Washougal owns about 2/3 of the area. It's a 40-acre development area. And Killian Pacific owns 1/3, and we're jointly marketing that area for prospective mixed-use development. And then on the west side, the Camas Meadows, Grass Valley area, out where Ken Fisher has his buildings and so forth, we've seen a lot of market interest out there. Besides the Fishers having 2 towers now, 2 5-story office buildings, and looking at ways that they can continue to develop out in their area. We have a new project coming online. Matt Olson's building a 60,000 square foot building, and we'll have some space to offer, which is encouraging for us because we have a lot of clients that say, hey, we want to locate in the Camas Washougal area. What do you have to offer? And in many cases, we don't have anything to offer. At the port, we're 100% occupied. Out at Camas Meadows, there's nothing to offer. So many times these companies said, I need to move tomorrow, or I need to move 6 months from now. It's very challenging to try to find space for them, and many times we have to hand them off to some of our other partners. So having space come online is probably going to fulfill our biggest challenge right now, which is trying to meet the prospective business coming in. Many times I get a question of what's the size of the clients that you're looking at? You know, if you asked me 18 months ago, I would have said the bulk of our clients were businesses looking at 2,000 to maybe 5,000 square feet. Every now and then you might get a 10,000 square foot user. But a lot of that was folks that really fit more into a multi-tenant type building or business park. Today, I would say that more prominently that we have 20,000, 30,000 square foot users that are looking for space, which is encouraging to see that we've got some larger players now looking at expanding their business or relocating their business. And so, you know, if I look at this year and what's going to transpire, I'm very encouraged, especially for City of Washougal, which has lagged behind some of the other communities. They were hit hardest during this economic recession. They lost 17% of their job base. If you look at the average region-wide, it was about 5% was lost during the Great Recession. So they were hit 3 times as hard and still haven't fully recovered like some of the other communities. But through creating our new market tax credit and the port taking on initiatives at Steigerwald and being able to offer space at market and sometimes below market, it's very encouraging, and I suspect that we'll have at least 2 new projects to announce this year out at the Port of Camas Washougal area, which will help feed into other economic development initiatives for the city. And within Westside Camas, we have a number of projects that are in the works. We have a number of companies that are looking to build speculative space. Traditionally, Camas has been a single user-oriented market. It's really been a market where a business wanted to locate and have a building built for them. And now that we have different investment groups and development groups looking at multi-tenant space, it's very encouraging to see how the economy is recovering and the response that the marketplace is taking within our neck of the woods.
Another wow. That's great stuff. So I appreciate all of your hard work. It's amazing what goes into one of those simple announcements that, hey, we've got a new employer. These guys have been cooperating for months, years, laying the groundwork, doing all kinds of things behind the scenes. And we may not see that when we're thinking about it. And also we may not see the obstacles, which is where I want to go with questions. But before that, I want to hear from Lynn Valenter and her perspective, because really we've created an economic engine in our area that may not be fully appreciated or understood. And that's what we've got going on at WSU Vancouver. So Lynn, if you could frame that up for us, that would be great.
Thank you. I work for an educational institution, so guess what? I'm going to try and educate. So first of all, I'd like to talk about the benefits of a college education. Then I'll tell you a little bit about WSU Vancouver and pertinent information that's helpful. And then talk about 5 proven areas of strategic initiative or action and how we're doing on those. So it will be brief, but it may not be as intuitive why WSU Vancouver is represented on an economic development initiative, and so let me connect those dots for you. The outcomes of a college degree over time are well documented and well known, and I think this group here is probably going to pay very close attention to this part. Each additional year of college represents a 7 to 10% earnings premium. That yields over $1 million in lifetime advantage for a 4-year degree holder on average. Other benefits of a college degree or college attendance include higher employment, lower public sector costs, including lower incarceration, unemployment, and other social safety net expenses, higher voting rates, higher volunteerism, higher tax contributions, higher levels of health, and longer lives. And potentially most importantly, their children benefit. They have greater school success, better health, and higher college attendance rates of their own. A little bit about WSU Vancouver. The Carnegie classification system for institutions of higher education classifies over 5,000 U.S. colleges and universities. Examples of classifications would be community colleges, special focus institutions, baccalaureate colleges, etc. Of the 5,000 institutions of higher education in the United States, Washington State University, including Washington State University Vancouver, is included in the highest, most prestigious designation. Research universities, very high. We are one of 108 universities with that designation out of the 5,000. Since WSU grants 1 degree across the state with the same scholarship standards, attendance at WSU Vancouver is not only local, but it offers a high-quality degree here in our hometown. Maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, but it matters a lot. Quality matters, and our community cares about quality. The Milken Institute is a nonprofit, nonpartisan economic think tank. Their examination of regional economic prosperity yielded 5 strategic policy recommendations to enhance regional economic competitiveness. Number 1, make higher education more affordable. Number 2, make higher education more accessible. Number 3, increase higher education graduation rates. Number 4, strengthen collaboration between higher education institutions and industries. And number 5, promote research and development. So how is our community doing with these 5 strategic policy recommendations? My answer, and as with other speakers, this is my answer alone, I'm not necessarily speaking for my institution. My answer would be that we're doing well on 2. We're doing poorly on 1. 1 is in process and will take time. And we need your help on the final element. First, the positive. Always good to start with positive. Our higher education system is more accessible, and we are increasing graduation rates. We're not done, but we're making consistent progress. As noted by Ken Fisher and others, we have a terrific educational system here in Clark County. We have very good K through 12 districts exploring innovative ways to positively impact student learning. Our community was an early advocate for early learning, and that has helped us improve student educational and social outcomes. Clark College, and I have colleagues in the room representing them, has provided a legacy of education opportunity in Clark County since 1933. WSU Vancouver was founded in part to improve the region's baccalaureate attainment rate, at that time one of the lowest in the state. We currently graduate almost 1,000 students every year with a baccalaureate or graduate degree. So we're delivering on our mission while continuing to expand degrees offered and awarded. Community 4-year attainment rate has increased to 27%, up from less than 20% when our university was founded here, but still not to the statewide achievement of 31%. Next, the ugly. Higher education in our state is less affordable than it has ever been. 4 years of budget cuts to state funding of 52% required tuition increases in the double digits every year, and that still didn't restore funding to the previous level. The state of Washington does provide a very good program of state need grants, but funding has been insufficient to meet demand. Increasing disinvestment of higher education, if maintained at historic declining rates, would leave our state funding at 0 by the year 2045. The needs time element. Promotion of research and development will yield results over time, but we need to grow and mature. Programs like our Research Showcase and Business Growth Mentor and Analysis Program work to distribute university learning and research into the community. And partnerships with local business, non-for-profit, and public sector partners facilitate community impact. The important part, where you can help. Where you can help is to strengthen coordination between higher education and industry. Reach out, ask how you can help. Offer to do informational interviews with students or be a classroom guest speaker. Fund a scholarship or even textbooks for a financially needy student. Offer an internship where a student is paid to learn and can assist with knowledge transference between your organization and our academic programs. Hire a student worker if you have flexible hours so they can afford to stay in school. Attend a job fair and hire our graduates. Volunteer for an industry advisory council position in your field or area of interest. We are your university and your community, and as we become a more educated community, we will become a more prosperous community. I'm going to close with a quote from Benjamin Franklin because wisdom is timeless. Energy and persistence conquer all things, and that is the heart of our community. Thank you.
We've been celebrating anniversaries. The Columbian had 125, and Riverview Bank had some, who else? Someone else. Anyway, we need to also congratulate WSU Vancouver on its 25th anniversary, which is held this year. So congratulations for Silver. So we'd like to plow in, and I guess the first question I would ask of the panelists is, what's standing in our way? What's in the way of additional growth? We can talk positively, and I think it's fantastic to talk positively, but what's standing in our way that's holding back potentially explosive or at least significant growth? Paul, do you want to start? I know we had a conversation a little bit about land, for example.
Right. You know, I think many times in communities, our biggest obstacle can be ourselves. Sometimes we can kind of overthink development, how we want development to be, but we really need to get back rooted into the basic market economics. Because if a project's not feasible, if you can't make it work, it's just not going to happen. If you're running a company, if you're not making profit, how are you going to afford to hire workers? And you really got to get back to some of the basics. I think, you know, as I look at some of the projects that we're trying to help the private sector undertake, many times it's on the regulatory side. It's not so much our local partners. We're small enough, lean enough, and still hungry enough to try to get projects through the pipeline, especially those that have job or business investment. But, you know, getting through some of the state or federal regulations can definitely be a hindrance. You know, we've had clients, used to be wetlands. What are you going to do with wetlands? How easy is it to fill wetlands? How easy is it to build around wetlands? Things like that. It's not that people were trying to degrade the environment or we're trying to dirty up the drinking water or anything like that. It's really, the question really is, what can I get done within this? That discussion has now shifted over to stormwater and how much land is it going to take me to build my building and also take and clean and hold stormwater. And we've had a number of clients where that's their leading question. And you know, I can take them into either City Hall or the port, and they're dumbfounded at how easy it is to work through the process. But when you get to that state or federal level, it can be very challenging. And we've had a project in the Grass Valley area of Camas that is stalled out for 2 years now. And it's really a discussion around how do we get development in some of these challenging areas, but also enhance the environment. So how can we have development integrate itself within there? We've had the state agencies buy off on it, but we just can't get the Corps of Engineer to look at it in a very fruitful manner. So I think sometimes getting out of our way is probably our greatest challenge.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I would echo what Paul says, and I'll also add, I think the other big driving factor here, and it goes beyond just the partners at this table, is really about the brand of our community, our identity. And I think Ken Fisher talked about be who you are this morning, and I think it's an interesting dynamic. I wouldn't agree that we should never cross the river, and I think that we are inextricably connected to Portland, but we have to understand what that means, and we have to create our own identity as a community and take advantage of what that would do. We have the urban-rural split. We have very high-end, high-paying, high-quality jobs with some traditional manufacturing mixed in. There's a lot of places in Clark County where a lot of competing forces connect. And I think the good news is we have great partnerships, but without certainty, without organization, I think the Community Foundation did a great job earlier this year with their value study, but it's not just serving whatever comes. I think it's important to understand what are our strengths, who do we want to be, where do we want to go, and then as a community, really figuring out what are the tools, what are the partners we need to make that happen. So certainty is huge for business, and I think the more we can really understand what our brand is, and I think it's a great community with great choices, both urban and rural, with a whole variety of diverse jobs, and an amazing place to be. And we really need to define that in a way that helps create certainty and helps spur investment in the community.
Got it. Teresa, anything to add?
Well, I'm going to echo the comments on perception of this area. As Ken Fisher pointed out, we have a value proposition in Vancouver that is really worth shouting about. And I think we don't have good education, we have great public education. I've lived in Cincinnati and in Washington, D.C. I've lived in areas where you had no choice except to send your kids to private school. And here you have a fantastic choice in public school, K through 12, and we need to promote that more. It's a great local regulatory environment for doing business. Yes, there are challenges at the state level, but I think we need to keep emphasizing our permit turnaround time here is very efficient and accessible, and for business, that's also part of our value proposition, but we need to be really together in saying that and in being consistent as we go out into the region and beyond and talk about what a great area this is.
I know a lot of people, even in this room, were involved in a program that was launched a number of years ago called Land Here, Live Here, and it still lives. It's on the back of Kim Capilotto's business card that you saw at your table today, and it continues. There's a new dimension called Learn Here to celebrate education in the area and honor outstanding leaders. So it's part of telling that story. And we're finally, I think, to a point where we're feeling better about the community. I talked to one person before we walked into this meeting, and they said, gee, we have permission to smile again. But it's odd. We haven't smiled in a while. What are your thoughts about maybe, are we getting some gravitas back and a swagger to our region and maybe a little bit more pride after the economic recession? Lynn, you want to tackle that? You see that coming?
The answer is yes. It's positive, it's hopeful, and as a community, we're standing up and being counted and channeling that positive energy. I can kind of wholeheartedly embrace the enthusiasm because I'm in a place where we have 3,000 students every day, and you're tempted to say, I'm tempted to say young students, but they're not all young students. I'm also a graduate of WSU Vancouver, a graduate program. So the students are enthusiastic. They believe in this area. And by choosing WSU Vancouver, 75% of our graduates stay in the area. And so they're investing their lives and their careers in our community, and the enthusiasm and the integration with all of you is, you can touch it and feel it. So it's terrific.
Yeah. That's great. Could any of you touch upon some of the employers that we've attracted and maybe the reasons you see for why they came? We've got some interest. We got Peace Health, which is a phenomenal engine in our area. They're the headquarters here. We add on to that Banfield. We add on to that Century. I'd miss them, but maybe you guys could tick off a few of them and the reason that they came here, that what they're telling us drove them to this area.
I'll kick it off. I think there's a lot of folks that did a lot of great work 10 years ago that is now coming to fruition, and it's the foresight within the city of Vancouver with the work that they've done preparing the waterfront, with Camas, Washougal, with Paul's leadership and that group, just some amazing forward-thinking investments out there. After hearing Ken this morning, I think we just figure out what CEO we want, we rename a street, and then just hope that they randomly stroll by. But really, no, I think we've looked at a lot of interest from corporate headquarters, and we found some interesting correlation between if a CEO has to be where the company is, this is a great place to be. Sometimes within our silo, we overstate quality of place, and it gets overused or abused. And it can be a determining factor, but I think it's important to understand that every place will pitch that they have quality of place. So I think it's important for us to know the logistics, being close to Portland Airport, closer than Portland to Portland Airport. They're a great partner of ours as well, too. The urban-rural split, the options, the places that we can get quickly, the energy costs, the labor, the educational institutions that not only just crank out more workers, but are fully integrated into the business community in a way that is really unique. And so from a swag standpoint, absolutely. Just got back from DC with WSU contingent, and it was great to talk about the amazing programs, really K through 20 that we have, and to be able to brag on a national scale to those things is pretty impressive. I do think that we need to figure out how to be different together, and that's the biggest challenge that we face, and I don't think we're over that yet. But as soon as I think we get that dialed in, I don't think many communities around the country are going to be able to compete.
That's awesome. Okay. Other comments there? I really like the different together. One thing that we were championing when we did that Land Here, Live Here program is that you folks sit here and you're cooperating, and yet at some moments you might feel like you're rivals, you're crosstown rivals fighting for the job or the opportunity. And there was a concept introduced that it's the difference between an A or an A+. If we're getting great jobs attracted to the region, and they happen to be just across the taxing district or whatever. Let's give it an A, but let's keep battling for the A+. And I really see the spirit of that in the leadership of this community, and I applaud you for continuing to carry that forward. Lynn, if we're talking about WSU Vancouver and how far it's going, can you give us a sense of maybe what we should expect going forward with WSUV and the energy there?
Our strategic plan calls for us to be at about 5,000 students at about 2020. Certainly the Great Recession impacted us as well as, and it has also impacted Clark College a bit more recently. We're going to grow. We're adding new programs. We continue to try to bridge WSU as a system and the state's land grant institution with WSU Vancouver so that we don't have to replicate everything that's in Pullman, nor do we want to, but we do have access through our campus to those resources. And that was particularly helpful, for example, with the Banfield recruitment, because vet med was a critical interest for them. We aren't going to replicate a vet med college on our campus, but the connections nevertheless can be leveraged. WSU Vancouver needs to grow. One of the things that we are currently studying is student engagement and how to improve our enrollment management. I would be surprised if that doesn't call for having a residential campus experience. And so that's something that we've talked about. It's nothing that's happening tomorrow or even next year. Because for those of you who are in marketing know, one of the most difficult things to assess is what is your market for people who don't consider you, right? You can't look at markets you've competed and lost. It's the people who don't even think of you. And we're increasingly seeing that students, unlike my generation where there was more of a desire to get away from home, current students don't want to be at home, but they do want to be close to home. And so having a residential experience at WSU Vancouver would allow for the best of both worlds, meaning we can keep the college graduates that our community has set up for success and allow them to that experience while we do the traditional bridging that allows for bridging from childhood into adulthood through the path of higher education and kind of a supervised setting. So I think that will happen within that time frame, but to be determined.
That's great. Well, it's not going to be there for my son who graduates in June from WSU Vancouver. I'm his residence hall at the moment, so, and his mess hall, his kitchen, his union. I'd like to turn to Teresa and ask maybe a follow-up question there on the Waterfront project. You know, this is a gigantic project, and I was just thinking when you were talking about 1.1 million square feet, that's approximately what Nike's adding on. Nike's adding about a third more to its overall facility, and that's gigantic. Talk a little bit about what you see. What are going to be some of the next steps that you anticipate in this rollout, and what should we be looking for, and how can we cheer on the project? So.
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity, and I have to acknowledge the Columbia Waterfront developers are here in the room, so I see Barry Kane and Jim Edwards here, so if I say something incorrectly, I'm sure they'll jump up and correct that. As I said before, this is an unprecedented opportunity for the whole region. Waterfronts throughout the country have already been developed out, so it's our turn. It's our turn here in Vancouver. And the full build-out, the economic impact of the full build-out is projected at just revised at $1.5 billion. So that's a huge impact to our region, and it's really to our benefit to get behind this project as a community, to be spokespeople for the waterfront, to make any connections that we possibly can to help it move forward. And so just to refresh on the status, we heard a great announcement last month of a hotel. The first development that announcement that we've heard, hotel will be underway by the end of the year. We have Columbia Way Street is is, as we speak, under construction. It's important to get the streets and the utilities in before development can start. And so that's funded through a combination of public and private sources. It's the whole waterfront is a great example of public-private partnership, and the impact on not only downtown but on the entire region will be felt over the next 20 years. I also see Katie Brooks in the audience representing the Port of Vancouver. Port of Vancouver has 10 acres adjacent to the 32-acre waterfront site, and the port is now coming forward and starting that community discussion about development of their portion of the waterfront. So the waterfront just expanded by a third, and so that's yet another opportunity for us. And let's see, did I answer your question?
That's a great update.
All right.
And I'll ask a follow-up, and then any questions from the audience. If you think of one, make sure you stick your hand up here. Infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
It has to precede
Yeah.
the nice shiny buildings
Right.
and and everything
Yeah.
else. Where else? What else are we in need of, infrastructure-wise, improvement-wise, and what's kind of our agenda, if you will, on as we think about state and federal legislatures? We're right in a biennium. What's on tap? What do we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, great question, because that's the non-sexy part, to see that the infrastructure.
I think it's sexy.
Depending on who you are, okay. We can have a discussion about that later. But it has to occur, right? The water and sewer lines have to go in, the streets have to go in, the connections have to be made before you can really start vertical construction. And so we have had really good support at the state and federal level so far. In fact, Columbia Way right now is partially funded by TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, grant specifically for economic development. It's the state recognizing that infrastructure drives economic development, and we're the poster child for that, for the entire state. And so that the first phase was the first phase was the Port of Vancouver's phase in realigning the railroad. Second phase was getting those access points under the railroad berm so we could actually drive down to the waterfront, and that's now happened through Esther and Grant. And then the next phase now is a connector arterial, Columbia Way. And if you haven't been down there, it's okay to walk down there, right, Barry? Okay, at your own risk, yeah. At least you can. All right, stay out of the way of the trucks because there's a lot going on, but at least, walk down to Esther and Grant and look through for the first time. Now the community can look at the Vancouver waterfront and see the water. So that's the first time that has happened, but that infrastructure phase, we just keep slogging away at that, and it's got to get done. And then really the kind of crown jewel of that is going to be this 7.3 acre waterfront park that is really going to be set a new standard, I think, in the whole region, we'll say, in the whole maybe Pacific Northwest for a really high-end look at what waterfront art can look like, what public art can be at a really high level. And so stay tuned and keep walking down and looking through Esther and Grant, and you'll be able to actually go on the street by the end of the summer.
Mike, do you want to add on? And then I'll get a question to you first. Hey.
First, my name is Paul Greenley. I'm a city councilor in Washougal. One thing I want to do right away is plug our waterfront project. Go to portcw.com, and they've got great trails that are happening. It'll be a fabulous park. You should be on.
A little friendly competition, that's good.
The city of Washougal has on its table the possibility of annexing something less than 200 acres in the northwest corner of the city. There are similar issues for the city of Ridgefield and the center, and I would assume for Battleground also. Roughly half of that piece is presently in holding under Clark County, but basically what we're thinking about doing is creating a new kind of zoning which we do not have yet, called Employment Center, roughly modeled on the Clark County Business Park kind of zoning. I'd like to take advantage of your experiences on this. Is this necessary, or should we just let it go residential? Given that the dirty little secret that people don't know is that by the third year, single-family home costs $1.25 in services for every dollar of revenue it provides to the city. So more houses, especially mid-market houses, is not sustainable. You're digging the hole deeper and wider as you go.
I think, let's throw that out to the panel and see how they might react.
I'll take a stab at it since it's in my backyard, so to speak. I think the biggest thing in terms of creating employment centers or business parks is making sure you have adequate and proper infrastructure. I think it's great to start planning for the future and so forth, but you can't begin to talk about placing businesses until you've got your strategy in place on how you're going to put the basic infrastructure in place. So given if you have that put in place, then talking about what kind of center should it be, what kind of zoning, what kind of building specs or regulations should be in place. One of the things that I think is most important is determine what do you want, what are you trying to get out of, what's the market position of that piece of property? What are your opportunities that you're going to seize? And how is that going to relate back into the community in terms of benefit? You're right about housing. In fact, one of the first things I did during my first year as mayor is I wanted to know, what did my land use cost me? As the community grew, what does that cost me in services? And the outcome of that was for our city at that point in time, our break-even point, if you looked at it just from a residential standpoint, was a $600,000 house. Not all of us can afford a $600,000 house. So if that's break-even, then you need to have employment centers. And so I think having flexibility, and this is something that I talked in great length with the city of Camas. They had their light industrial business park. You had these 100 and 200 foot setbacks, and they're great if you're trying to create these mega campus type complexes, but that's not today's market. Today's market really is the 10, 20, 30,000 square foot spaces, and you can't have those kinds of setbacks. It's especially as precious as land is today. So I think having in your development code the flexibility to achieve what you want to try to achieve, but also be able to work with the private sector, and especially, each piece of property is just different. And so you got to really figure big picture, what are you trying to do, and work with the private sector to give them as much certainty as possible. The other thing is flexibility in uses, and in today's world, you can't just put things in neat boxes. You can't just say, well, this is manufacturing, this is dirty manufacturing, this is clean manufacturing. That just doesn't exist in today's world, especially given all the other things that companies have to deal with. And so really think about having a very flexible code in terms of both development standards and uses, but also how is that going to relate? In the area that you're thinking of, if you turned it to residential, you'd have people snatching it up tomorrow, guaranteed. I've got lots of different clients that are looking for property, and they would snatch it up. But what does that do for your community? And if you're making decisions about long-term planning goals and so forth, and where are you going to create jobs, and how are people in your community going to be able to sustain that type of lifestyle, then you have to have employment centers. And so you got to think about, from a future standpoint, what are some of the things that you can do to try to generate jobs, but also what can you do in the meantime to try to drive infrastructure, drive different things there. And sometimes you have to, it's a give and take. And so there are some areas, Camas is dealing this with right now. There are areas that were hands-off, no housing, and they're now looking at mixed-use development where it's high-tech companies, but you're also creating some small commercial and also housing. And so you really have to think about what is it that you're trying to achieve and what's your best strategy to get there.
Want to let Mike add to that, and then we're going to wrap up. So.
Just real quick, focus on freight for transportation. There's some key corridors, I-5 corridor, 14, Battleground 502, 503. Stay tuned on that, but more information will come out. Specifically, in response to your question, I think on paper right now we have a lot of industrial land, and the comprehensive planning process, we have a lot of industrial land. In practice, it's completely different. And so there are a lot of pieces out there that we need to take a look at and say, what is our goal? What's our strategy? And I think the key, again, is just being realistic about what you want with the site. That has some constraints and some challenges, but at the same time, it could also be a great opportunity. And so for that specific side, I think the key, and I'll give a plug for our investors, and I think Berger ABAM was a sponsor and others. We have great folks in the community that can help with that process and identify specifically what it is you're targeting. And it may be a mix of folks. It may not look specifically originally like you want, but the key is, I think, being realistic up front and then not holding onto it just for the sake of the numbers.
I sense that we're getting less provincial and more interdependent and more cooperative and looking for the bigger picture here. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of that community and part of those discussions. Makes me feel good, and it really makes, I think, it projects the right image for our region. So I think we've got a great team who are on the front lines on our behalf, and they're very accessible and cooperative. So if you would join me in thanking these 4 people for their great work. So. Thanks to the Columbian and to Aaron and Gordon, the 2 people on the business page who are making that happen, so we really appreciate their hard work. And have a great month and year, and go make some more money, right? Take care.
Good job, Ron.
Good job.
Nice work. Hi. Yes.
Is there? Hi. Oh.
I think if we made it a priority,